Okay, cool. Hey, everyone. Once again, welcome to Maddox AI and Customer Success Summit. You are currently watching Untangling AI, What to Expect in the Future. I'm super excited to introduce our speakers for this session. And as I introduce them, I'm going to have them answer our icebreaker question. What would you use AI to automate in your life outside of work? So to kick us off, excited to introduce Nick Meach, co-founder and CEO of Matic, who will also be the moderator for this panel. Nick, what's your answer?
Uh, I don't know if I don't know if we're quite there yet, but I would probably say laundry. I can't stand doing laundry, so laundry would be top of the list to automate if possible.
Awesome. Allison Pickens, founder and general partner of the New Normal Fund.
Hi, everyone. I think for me, if I could have an AI that could just like automatically detect when we're low on diaper supplies, low on wipes, and like other types of foods that my household consumes repeatedly, and just, auto refills them, that would be outstanding.
We also have Grace Gee, principal at Menlo Ventures.
Thanks, Bex. I feel like mine is really basic. I just want someone where I can give a stream of consciousness of like personal tasks, and versus putting it in a Notion to do list, just being able to say it verbally and have all of that decision making, all of those preferences, all of those actions be automatically taken care of.
I love that one. I think I would also use that. We also have John Gleason, founder and managing partner of Success Venture Partners.
Hey, everybody. So I love to surf, and I also have a young family, so I don't have a lot of time to go surfing. And the surf forecasts are fine, but I've got all of these little algorithms running in my head about which spot is best on the best day. So I would build a AI to say, okay, you have 45 minutes. Your best bet to get the best wave at this day is right here. Go get it. And then I could do my activity as much as I want, because I don't get to do it nearly as often as I'd like with all of the other commitments in life.
And last but not least, Zaya Yang, partner at Andreessen Horowitz.
Mine is sort of like building on what Allison said. I was thinking I would have a fridge that would restock itself automatically, and then every day it would also tell me what I need to eat or cook. And then, I don't know, maybe we get to the point where it also cooks for me.
Love it. Thank you all for your responses. Before I pass it off to Nick, just a friendly reminder to everyone, please add any questions you have to the Q&A, which can be found in the Zoom controls bar. We'll spend the last 10 minutes of the session answering your questions. Awesome. So without further ado, Nick.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for being with us here today. To kick things off, the first question that I'd love to ask the panel here is, what are some of the things that you guys are seeing from an investment standpoint when it comes to AI? Are there certain categories that you guys are seeing a lot of investment in?
Yeah, Nick, I'm happy to tackle this one head on, just because, I think Zaya and I at our respective firms, Menlo and A16Z, we've had a really interesting front row seat to see what's happening in this new golden era of AI. And it's kind of incredible. I think if you look at some of the data around, investment activity, I think PitchBook recently put this out, but in just like the first 6 months of 2023, I think more than 15 billion has gone into generative AI companies globally. Obviously, like the majority of that is, Microsoft's 10 billion investment. But even if you take that aside, the value of VC investing going into generative AI is up, 60% or so compared to the same period in 2022. And when we look at areas that investors are really excited about, this is how we kind of break it down at Menlo. There's core infrastructure. So this is the foundational model layer, companies and vector databases. So Menlo is an investor in Anthropic. Obviously, OpenAI is one, Cohere is one. Then you have the vector DBs, Pinecone, Chroma, Weaviate. Then you move up the stack, and this is where things start to get really interesting. This is what we call the middle layer, dev tooling. This is anything from agent app frameworks like, LangChain, Fixie, AutoGPT, there's model selection, routing, training, deployment. So companies like Replicate, Modular, Base 10, Mosaic ML was just acquired by Databricks for $1 billion. And then you get to the app layer, right? And so we classify that as horizontal, like Jasper, Runway ML, or vertical, like Harvey or ReleVoice. And I don't think there is one area necessarily that is getting more attention than others. I think the reality of it is investors are excited up and down the stack, and we continue to be so.
And I'm happy to add on there. I think we think about it very similarly in terms of whenever there's like a big tech shift like this, it's helpful to think about the tech stack. And so we have this piece we wrote, like the emerging LLM app stack, but there's very much the foundational model layer, then you need a database layer, then there's like a frameworks and orchestration layer. You're going to need observability and monitoring, and then ultimately the applications. And echoing Grace, like I think we've seen investment activity throughout the entire stack. One other way we can think about it is like, is the company like totally AI or LLM native, or is it a startup that maybe was doing something else, or like was still trying to figure out product market fit, and then now had the opportunity to adopt LLMs or AI very early on? And sometimes that helps frame like, because team and DNA and how they think about the advancements is so important. So that's another angle that we'll look at when we look at companies.
Makes sense. Yeah, and I think, obviously when you go on LinkedIn, right, my LinkedIn feed is just filled with, companies posting about AI and just AI in general. So where do you guys see in terms of the hype cycle or just adoption? Are we kind of are we crossing the chasm at this point? Like, where do you guys see that in terms of the adoption of AI across your guys' portfolios?
So to tackle, I guess, the first question, adoption across our portfolio companies has been incredible. I think, we talk about this internally a lot. Unlike other paradigm shifts in tech, mobile, cloud, etc., this feels like one of the first ones where both, startups and incumbents are embracing it fully head on, and just like the speed of adoption has been insane. And so, we have this internal graph where we talk about complexity of the AI stack and where companies are on the maturity curve, right? You can be, at the bottom where you're just doing prompt engineering, maybe you're going up the stack, you've adopted a vector DB, and then at the highest end, you're creating your own custom LLM. And I think for us, we believe as companies, gear up their maturity and sophistication and understanding of AI, they'll go further up the AI complexity curve. And then I think to your second question, where are we in the hype cycle? I think we're still very, very much, at the peak of expectations. I know like Gartner has that curve. There's the trigger of innovation, then there's the peak, and then you go down the trough of disillusionment. I don't think we're there yet, right? I think despite, the metrics from ChatGPT saying, hey, for the first time in June, we saw a decrease in unique visitors, decrease in the amount of time. You look at NVIDIA's blowout quarter and their earnings this week, and just like they added 50 billion in valuation because they blew out their forecast. And I think we're still very, very much in the early innings of excitement here.
Makes sense. So I guess kind of, transitioning a little bit more, tying it back to customer success. Obviously, a big topic of the summit is how AI can impact CS. John, both you and Allison obviously have a background in CS. So how do you guys envision CS teams using AI?
I was thinking through this because not too long ago I was operating in a high growth company that was only last January, and from last January to now, I almost feel like I've aged or become a dinosaur, because these topics were just starting to emerge. How do we equip our teams? How do we think about our teams maybe using this? There was a lot of maybe fear early on, like what is this going to mean for CS? Will we completely, automate the whole thing, to actually like moving? And we're not in CS. We generally don't deal with the whole AI stack. We're generally dealing with the point solutions, the app layer of it. And so just like when thinking about dealing with teams, it's a little bit like any like change management process in a lot of ways. I think like initially what I started to hear and talk to people about, there's like, okay, we're going to do an outright ban on the app layer. We're not going to let our teams use ChatGPT. In reality, what ends up happening is people skirt that. There really are productivity gains, and so people working from home are using their personal computers to get those gains. So then when it comes to like equipping your teams, it becomes like change management, like anything else, where selecting what are the right needs of the team, what are the right solutions for it, and then the layers of education and training and equipping them with the safety and the privacy concerns for using the different solutions that you're going to give them. So I would say like, yeah, there's a real duty for managers and leaders to kind of figure out that for their team. But I would say like we're still definitely in the early innings of all of the solutions that will come to market and support CS teams. I think we're just like at the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the app layer, for sure.
I can build on that. Definitely we're at the tip of the iceberg. I see so much activity, people trying to figure out how to make CSMs more productive, also like automate the role of CSMs and improve the product as well in a way that makes CSMs jobs much easier. I'll list out a few examples in those three categories. In making CSMs more productive, there are a ton of products out there right now that are summarizing meeting notes and action items from those meetings, like Note Taker AI is one that I'm seeing used a lot. I actually just this morning was brainstorming with Pi.ai, which is like a conversational AI where I was, gave it a situation with a client that was going to churn and like talk to it about like, how could we actually save this client? Curious to know if other people have used it that way. I'm seeing products for synthesizing research about companies that are made public, like through public filings or job descriptions, and then generating talking points for CSMs. There's auto-generating decks for meetings. Obviously, Matic is paving the way in that category. And then under that second area of automating the role of CSM or support, I see a lot of companies using like support chatbots, which I think could be used for like answering probably basic how-to questions, as well as, automatically emailing the long tail of customers with upsell campaigns. Wizia is one company that's like initially targeting salespeople for this use case, but I think, also relevant for CSMs. And then under like category of improving the products that CSMs don't have to do as much work, those chatbots in product can be really useful for gathering feedback from customers and kind of gauging their interest about, like what would they like to see on the roadmap, as well as, there are products like Atlas that are trying to make it easier to create and maintain documentation for the product, which right now, like teams like Stripe staff up like huge, groups or companies like Stripe have, staff up huge teams of people to go out and do that. And then finally, there's a self company I've been working with that's helping people auto-generate configurations for software to like customize the product to your use case. That could open up like, a whole, so many possibilities for automating the onboarding process completely. So I think there are a lot of interesting things on the horizon.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you touched a lot upon the data aspect. And I think we see this a lot in the market. I mean, CSMs are touching a variety of data sources, right? Whether it's CRM data, usage data that's living inside of a product or even inside of a BI tool. And they're having to go and pull all of that stuff together to make those meaningful insights. So I think, like I mentioned on the first session, I think the data enablement piece is going to be a huge lever, to be able to up level your CSMs, to be able to talk to data and more confidence, especially being able to tie it back to value. So I love that. I guess what from your guys' perspective, what are the organizations, right, that you feel like are poised in terms of having success in an AI-led future, right? So I know what you guys all mentioned we're early on, but it seems like this is here to stay. It's only going to get bigger and bigger. So what organizations do you feel like are set up for success to adopt this?
Yeah, I can jump on this one. I think there's been a lot of talk the last few months about how well the incumbents seem to be positioned, especially in the early innings, for the reasons that they have the distribution, right? But I think again, because we're in the early innings, I think the expectation is that the full potential of AI and capabilities is going to require a bigger like more fundamental shift in how products are getting built. And I think naturally in that case, you'd have to believe that the startups are going to be the ones who can, innovate and come up with what that new paradigm looks like, because at the end of the day, the incumbents are somewhat constrained by their existing products and their core business. And maybe today, if all you're really trying to do is use like an API and then embed some auto response capability into your product, like that's very easy to do. But if you're actually trying to change like a user experience or the way a CSM does the job, then I think somebody who can move faster and isn't confined to an existing product is probably going to have the advantage there.
Yeah, I would agree with Zaya's point. I think the only thing that I would add is, especially as an investor, the question is, what does the future look like? If you're investing at the app layer, what does the future of apps look like that are powered by generative AI? And I think my response is, I don't think we've seen the best apps that have been created yet. I think there's so much innovation in the future, and I think there's so much ahead of us that will really shock us in terms of what the future will look like and what's possible. And so as an investor, I think where incumbents have advantage, especially in distribution and product, is if you are just creating another, company that looks like an existing incumbent, but just with generative AI powered by, OpenAI, Anthropic, I think the incumbents have the advantage. If you're creating a completely different application that, we haven't even been able to dream of, then I think, obviously innovator's dilemma. So startups will prevail.
I really like what Grace said, and I would add that AI changes the power dynamic within companies and changes what the needs are as a result. One example, I invested recently in a company called Ignition, which is helping to power, marketing campaigns, end to end using AI. And their point of view is that product marketers, which used to be, I think, like a well-respected team, but like broadly considered a small sub-function within broader marketing, that those teams are now going to be the most important team within a marketing organization because they own the content, which now is like basically the sort of focal point for using AI. And so, Ignition is now selling to and empowering product marketers as their wedge. There's not really an existing incumbent that's owning product marketers at the moment. So to Grace's point, I think new categories will be created simply because their new needs and resulting from there being like new or different roles within companies.
Yeah, I completely agree with that too. Like I reflect on even what we did at Motive. We brought the trucking industry online for the first time, but largely the way in which we did that at the start was like digital transformation. And we mimic things that kind of existed in real life and put them, on a computer for the first time. But when you think about AI, was that actually the best way to do things? And, if we didn't have to do certain pieces, where would the balance of power shift? What would be the best way to do that process? Would we even do the process in the same way? And so I think, like you said, Allison, there's such a like reshuffling of like where, maybe like power in organizations or where the value clusters. And there will be like a shift in the teams that either like rise or become more important within organizations. And so watching that shake out as I think interesting as well as things shuffle around.
I know we got time probably for one last question before we open it up to Q&A. So the last question that I have for the group is just, what are some of the red herrings when it comes to AI that you guys have come across?
You can start. One thing that I found to be distracting for early stage startups is embracing AI, like trying to incorporate AI into your product without really thinking about whether it's helpful on your path to product market fit. Although I think it's really important for startups that were born in like 2020 and 2021 to really think through what their new product strategy is in this new era of AI. I have noticed some actually like losing sight of what the core problem is they're solving because they're, trying to show that they are an AI company. One company I saw, sort of embrace it, not in the service of product market fit, did actually amass a really significant wait list for their product because, the AI branded website and launch like attracted, a large demographic of people, but they still have to figure out how to use that wait list in service of, accelerating their core product.
Makes sense. Any other final thoughts on that before we switch over to Q&A? Awesome. Very cool. Well, Bex, I'll pass it over to you to handle the Q&A.
Yeah, we have a couple questions for the team here. First one, can you recommend a resource that lists some of these products that Allison talked about that we can explore? I'd love to explore more products that can support CX, CS.
I can put some in the chat window and others can list them too.
Awesome. Go ahead.
Oh, I like to go to the website. I think it's there's an AI for that. Have you ever seen that? And it's kind of interesting. Just you see in the ways in which people are building different things. And it's certainly at the app layer mostly.
Next question: how to safeguard yourself as a CSM moving forward?
I think like as the CSM, like relationships and the connection with people matter like more than ever before. As we like strip away a lot of the tasks that CSMs do, your interaction with people actually probably stands out even more than it did in the past. Like we always talk in CS about kind of the busy work and the reactive work, but a lot of that I believe can get or will get stripped away. And so I would say like the human connection is still really important, particularly like if you're in enterprise or bigger customers. Really like lean into kind of the core relationship side of things, because now you have an opportunity to actually maybe even do that more at scale because some of those tasks to prepare for those interactions are becoming so much easier. So I think CSM or customer facing roles, people doing business with people is still a thing for a minute.
Yeah, I would agree with John, and I would look at the paradigm of like generation 1 chatbots. I mean, the reality of it is there still needs to be a human interface. So I would be worried less about job displacement and be more interested about how do I use these new technologies to make me more efficient and supercharged so I can become CSM++, right? Because I think the reality as you think about your workflow is we want to be strategic. We want to be able to personalize every customer interaction. We want to be able to service them very deeply, but you can't do that at scale when you look at your book of business. And AI gives you that capability because now you have the ability to kind of go through your customer feedback at scale and proactively understand how to cluster and categorize and have something to help you with task management and generation. And so it really up levels what you're able to do, your best self, I would think, versus, taking over.
I just to kind of chime in, I totally agree with what has been said. I do think it's going to help automate a lot of those busy tasks that customer success managers are doing. And it's going to give them the opportunity to do what they do best, which is build those relationships, as John mentioned. So I don't think that's going to go away. If anything, there's going to be a higher priority on those type of tasks now that CSMs have more time to go and do that.
How should we equip companies and employees to be responsible and secure?
That touches on, a different topic of AI that I think a lot of investment excitement is around, which is, security in a Gen AI world. And so we're starting to see companies where, to name a few, I think Creedle is one, there's one or two others, that basically allow companies to set, policies around what is the company specific endorsed way to use AI. And then there's kind of enforcement at the org and team level. There's obviously companies like Hidden Layer and so many more that are helping organizations really protect and red team, blue team, kind of the use of this new technology. But, I think it's a new and nascent area, and I think there's a lot of innovation and dollars going into this. And so I still think it's, TBD, and I think it's still Wild West.
And I also think this is why, when it comes to the app layer in a B2B context, it still feels like we're very much in the early innings, right? Like a lot of this generative AI talk has come out of things like Midjourney, people like generating a lot of art, or like really cool consumer use cases. But yeah, customer relationships matter a lot, and you don't want to like put any of those at risk through some new technology. And that's why there's a lot more that's coming down the pipeline, we feel, when it comes to AI applications.
What would be your red flags as far as an organization not using AI responsibly for CS, CX specifically?
The opposite of what we just said. Like maybe like letting it do too much, or like maybe like putting automation ahead of the customer's needs, or like actually solving their problem. But at the end of the day, it's you're still building like a workflow product or something to solve somebody's problem. It's not we're not like trying to take what's the saying, like take a hammer and then just like find a nail, right? It's like at the end of the day, like creating customer value is the North Star, and you can't lose sight of that because there's like a shiny new tool.
And I think John mentioned this earlier, but there's a lot of change management that I think will also need to happen, right? And enabling your team to be able to go and leverage AI in the right way, to go back to what Zia just mentioned on creating value for your customers. So I think it's going to have to happen in a phased approach, and it's not just going to be, hey, we got to adopt AI for the sake of adopting AI, but going back to really helping your customers achieve their objectives. I think that's the thing that we really need to stay focused on.
Awesome. So with that, we are at the end of our session. There's a couple questions we weren't able to get to, but we will pass these along to the speakers and share their answers in our resource hub, which we will email all of you when that is live. Again, thank you to all of our wonderful speakers for joining us today and for sharing a lot of great insights and knowledge. And thank you everyone else for attending. Have a great rest of the summit.
Thanks.